everyone, it's Maddie
and V, and today we're going to go over our TBR for January, February and March, which is part of our new way of planning every 90 days.
We've taken this method from Sarah Cannon. She has a channel on AuthorTube and we absolutely love her content and thought we'd just apply it to every aspect of our life, not just writing.
So we have 5 individual picks and then we also have 2 series that we're aiming to read together.
So the first series is the 6 books of Vampire Academy. This is a reread for us. It's books that we have on our Kindle and so they're the perfect books to read on our way to work.
And hopefully we can get through like one every week and a bit, depending on whether we listen to them in the car journey as well as the bus journey. We also plan on doing series reviews for both of the series that we're going to reread, and we'll be filming those as we finish each book, so it will sort of be a collective diary of reading that series at the end once we finish them.
The next series is one of my personal favourites but one B hasn't yet read, and that's The Jewel by Amy Ewing.
Now these two are considerably shorter than the first one, so we're going to read both of these in February and then The Jewel in January.
It's been a year since I've read this series and I'm really excited to go back into it because I binged all 3 in like the span of 2 days, so I'm looking forward to taking my time with it and savouring it because I know what happens, and also getting to share it with B and see what her reaction to it is, because it's kind of like the selection for me, and since we read the selection last year and we want to wait a bit longer before we do another reread, this seemed like the perfect thing to take its place.
Dystopians are pretty much how I've started every year since reading. It was Divergent one year, Legend the next, and now we've just done the selection, so I'm happy to keep that tradition alive with this. Next we have our individual picks, and we are not putting these in any order in which to read.
My first pick is going to be one that's really familiar if you saw our fantasy TBR, and that's Everless by Sarah Holland. It's a book that I didn't get to, obviously, in 2018, and now we've recently been approved for the 2nd book on NetGalley, so I'm going to try and read them back to back.
My first pick is This Adventure Ends by Emma Mills, which was one of Maddie's favourite books of last year. I didn't do so good this year with reading her favourite books, so I'm going to try and change that in 2019.
My next pick is A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. This is one of my favourite books of 2017 and probably one of the best romances I've ever read. This year we're putting our priorities back on our contemporary project, so I'm really inspired to read others and see what I can gather about how they tell stories, and I think romance is something that I definitely need help with in terms of pacing, so I'm going to be looking to this one for advice.
In a similar vein, I've chosen Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer, another one of Maddie's favourites. This is dual POV, just like our very own contemporary story, so I'm going to be looking at this in a craft sense as well. This is quite a long book and I do worry with our time schedule that I should have been picking a lot shorter things because I don't want to spend more than a week reading one book, but I'm hoping this will have a real impact on me.
Next is Only Love Can Break Your Heart by Catherine Webber. I read Wing Jones at the beginning of 2017, I think it was. I really liked it, and for some reason I didn't dive into this one straight away once we bought it at Yelk last year. It's been on the shelves for a fairly significant amount of time and I don't know that much about it besides like we read I think the first 5 chapters whilst we were waiting for her to sign the book.
It's another one that deals with grief, I think, so that's your heavy book.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm excited to see what her sophomore novel is like.
Next I've chosen Did I Mention I Need You by Estelle Mascombe. I had the best time reading Dimmerly at the end of the summer. I read it for the first 30 minutes as soon as I woke up, so it took me quite a while to read, but I just kept wanting to go back to it, and I have a feeling that's going to be the same for the rest of the series, but it's not something I think I could binge, so I'm going to read this one and then maybe 6 months later I'll finally pick up the 3rd book. So whilst I'm waiting for Estelle's 6th books to be released, I'm glad I still have her backlist.
Next I have Confetti Cake by Laurel Remington. This is the 2nd book in the Secret Cooking Club series. I really enjoyed the 1st book. It was just so light and fluffy and reminded me of the kind of things I read when I was younger, and a lot of the time I'm just in the mood for books that will put a smile on my face, and I'm hoping that this one will do that for me.
Next I want to read The Marked Girl by Lindsay Klingle. We were sent this and its sequel by the author, and I'm so excited to read it because it's about a prince and 3 of his royal friends who find themselves in modern day LA after travelling through a portal from their fantasy world. It's basically the opposite concept of our fantasy story, so I can't wait for the hijinks. I think it's going to be so fun.
Sounds like a Totally Spies episode.
And it also excites me that it's just a duology because I might be able to read them back to back.
And lastly I have a very long overdue read for me, and that's The Loose Ends List by Carrie Firestone. This was on my summer TBR of last year, so it has been sitting on the shelves for ages, but again I'm just in the mood for a contemporary story in the vein of Morgan Matson. It's set on a boat, which is something that I've always wanted to write myself, so I'm super excited about the concept of it, and also the whole checking things off a list thing is a really easy format to read. I feel like it will go really quickly despite it being quite a long book. I think I'm going to be kicking myself for not reading this one sooner.
And finally I have An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. When I first added this book to my TBR it was only a trilogy, and now it's getting a 4th book and maybe even a 5th one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I definitely want to read this soon because it was way hyped on BookTube years and years ago, and I felt like it was a BookTube book where I really missed the hype train train. I remember hearing really mixed things at the time. I think it was one that you either loved or you hated, so I hope I fall into the loved category.
So in the past, our 5 books that we wanted to read in the year has never gone well, so hopefully having a shorter deadline on these books will mean that we'll have a successful wrap up at the end of March.
Thank you everyone so much for watching. We make bookish and writing content every week, so don't forget to subscribe.
You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MaddieandB, and those links are always in the description. We'll see you next time.